Imagine a man sitting inside a massive copper boiler.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, just picture it. It's the height of the Industrial Revolution in London, right? A place called Southwark. And this guy is crouched inside the dark, hollow drum of this boiler, holding a heavy iron hammer against the copper rivets.
That sounds incredibly loud.
Oh, it's deafening.
Yeah.
On the outside, you've got another worker swinging a sledgehammer, just pounding against the metal.
Right.
The sound of copper being hammered while you are inside that echoing chamber, I mean, it is mind-shattering. It is an absolute physical assault on the senses.
Oh, absolutely.
A normal person right off the street, they couldn't bear the noise for 10 seconds without feeling like their skull was, splitting open.
Yeah, they'd run out instantly.
But this man inside the boiler, he has his head leaning against the metal, and he is fast asleep.
It is a stunning picture of habituation, really. The human brain has this terrifying capacity to adapt to the most extreme, alarming environments until the noise just completely fades into the background.
Welcome to Reformed Thinking. Today, we're immersing ourselves in a 150-year-old warning about that exact phenomenon, but, applied to the human soul.
Right. The spiritual boiler factory, so to speak.
Spot on. Our focus is a text from February 3rd, 1871. It's a message delivered by Charles Spurgeon at the Metropolitan Tabernacle in London titled Sleep Not.
A very direct title.
Very. And it was republished in 2018. It pulls its entire weight from a single urgent command found in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 6.
Which says, "Let us not sleep, as do others."
Yes. Our mission today is to analyze this intense alarm bell against spiritual slumber. We're going to look at 9 distinct biblical illustrations that were used to address both the established church and the unconverted listener.
It's a heavy text. Very heavy.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the massive fundamental paradox that sets the stage for everything else.
Right, the contrast in how we live.
Yeah, because human beings are incredibly awake, frantic, and hypervigilant regarding earthly matters.
Oh, completely.
We track our money, we follow the news cycle, we chase promotions, but when it comes to eternal matters, we are sluggish. We drag our feet.
To really grasp the theology behind this paradox, picture a massive brass hourglass.
Yeah.
And the sand is just rushing through uncontrollably. We are trapped in a physical body, dwelling in a fallen world.
Right. And the physical world is loud.
It's demanding. It possesses a biological urgency. You feel hunger, your stomach growls, so you immediately work for food.
You feel the winter cold, so you actively seek shelter.
Exactly. The feedback loop is instant. But the needs of the soul are invisible.
Yeah, that's the scary part.
The decay of the soul doesn't produce a physical ache in your joints. And because of our fallen nature, which naturally leans away from God, those invisible eternal realities get pushed entirely to the background.
It is the ultimate case of out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, very much so.
There's a phrase used in the text that paints this perfectly. It says, "We drive like Jehu for the present world, but we loiter for the world to come."
I love that reference.
Right. For those who might not know the biblical reference, Jehu was a commander known for driving his chariot like an absolute maniac,
He was furious, fast, unstoppable.
kicking up dust everywhere he went. And that is how we act about our bank accounts, our careers, our 5-year plans.
We are driving chariots at top speed.
But for eternity, we loiter. We just stand around.
There is a rugged poem quoted in the text by an old writer named Francis Quarles that drives this home perfectly.
Oh yeah, the imagery he uses is incredibly vivid.
It's jarring, honestly. He compares our earthly pursuits to roebucks, which are wild deer sprinting across the mountains.
Right, we are fast, agile, full of energy.
Leaping over obstacles when chasing earthly gains. But when it comes to heavenly devotion, Quarles says we are like snails.
Snails. From a wild deer to a snail.
He writes that our thoughts are made of millstones, and our souls are made of lead. Our desires are dead.
Millstones and lead, I mean, you cannot get heavier than that. It is the exact opposite of being uplifted or spirited.
It feels like gravity is turned up to 10 when you try to pray, but you feel light as a feather when you're, chasing a paycheck.
Yes. And there are striking modern examples given for this 1871 audience that feel like they were written yesterday.
Oh, they translate so well to today.
The text points out how a piece of news concerning a fire on another continent or the discovery of a new gold field will send a thrill through the public pulse.
People will drop everything.
They will liquidate their assets and cross dangerous oceans for a chance at gold. But when you tell people about the eternal fire of judgment, that never goes out.
Or the blessed city where the streets are literally made of gold.
Right. It elicits zero emotion. People take it coolly as if it's just a pretty fiction.
It highlights a severe disconnect in human perception. The temporary things, which will eventually turn to dust and slip through our fingers, cause massive global movements.
Entire industries are built on temporary panic or temporary greed.
But the permanent things, the realities that will outlast the sun and the stars, are completely ignored. To illustrate the severity of this condition, there's a very personal anecdote shared about a time of illness.
Oh, the hop pillow.
Yeah, someone recommended using a pillow of hops to help induce sleep. Hops, the plant used in brewing, were often stuffed into pillows back then because their aroma has mild sedative qualities.
I didn't actually know that about hops.
Yeah, it was a common remedy. But after analyzing the state of the human heart, the conclusion is drawn that we don't need a sleeping pillow at all.
Oh, we need a waking pillow.
Exactly. The author says he would prefer a roaring devil to a sleepy devil.
I have to pause on that because it hits so close to home. And honestly, it sounds a little crazy at first.
It is a shocking statement.
I want to bring up an analogy to modern hustle culture here. Think about how we optimize every single second of our physical lives right now.
Oh, with all the tech and schedules.
Yeah, you have apps tracking your sleep cycles, your macros, your steps, your daily screen time. We have highly structured, color-coded morning routines to maximize productivity.
We're obsessed with being hyper-awake and active in the physical realm.
Yet we essentially hit the snooze button on our souls. We will spend hours optimizing a retirement portfolio for a future decade we might not even live to see.
But give almost no thought to the unending eternity that follows our last breath.
Right. But here is my pushback about that anecdote. Why would anyone in their right mind want a roaring devil?
That's the big question.
How could a roaring devil possibly be preferred to peace? Life is hard enough. Humans need peace to function. Living in a state of constant spiritual warfare sounds like a recipe for absolute burnout.
It sounds entirely counterintuitive until you analyze the deceptive nature of false peace. A roaring devil implies active, noticeable spiritual warfare.
Okay, so it's visible.
Exactly. If the devil is roaring at you, you know you are in a fight. You are awake, you are alert.
You can't ignore a roar.
You're constantly driven to your knees in prayer, forced to be entirely dependent on God because the threat is visible, loud, and terrifying. It keeps the believer vigilant.
Silent apathy, however, is a stealthy killer.
Yes. A sleepy devil leaves you alone, makes you comfortable, strokes your ego, and convinces you that everything is fine while you slowly drift into spiritual ruin.
So the lack of friction is actually the trap.
Precisely. The absence of conflict is not the same thing as the presence of life.
Wow.
I mean, a corpse is very peaceful, but it is still dead.
That is a brutal image, but it's spot on.
The point being made is a preference to be in absolute agony fighting tooth and nail for spiritual life, rather than being comfortably numb and drifting off a cliff.
Because earthly burnout is a temporary physical state, but spiritual death is an eternal catastrophe.
Exactly.
That perfectly links the general condition of spiritual slumber to how it specifically infects those who are already believers.
Right, because the message is divided into two distinct halves.
Yeah. The first half is a direct, unfiltered address to the people of the church, and the first biblical illustration pulled out to show what this looks like is just devastating.
It takes us straight to the Garden of Gethsemane.
Yeah. This is where we see a stark, terrifying contrast between the disciples and Christ.
Jesus is entering the most agonizing moment of his earthly life. He's about to bear the weight of human sin.
The text notes that Christ's entire life was an agony for souls. His zeal for God's house had eaten him up.
And in Gethsemane, Christ is sweating, but not the sweat that distills from someone who is doing daily physical labor to purchase bread.
They call this staff of life.
Right. No, Christ is sweating the agony of his heart. He is pleading at the mercy seat.
And we need to clarify what that means for you listening. The mercy seat was the gold lid on the Ark of the Covenant in the Old Testament, the exact place where the high priest sprinkled the blood of the sacrifice to appease the wrath of God.
It's the focal point of atonement.
Yeah, and Jesus is in the garden preparing to become that ultimate sacrifice. He is staring down the barrel of cosmic justice.
And while Jesus is literally sweating blood under the crushing infinite weight of impending judgment, what are his closest friends doing?
They are sleeping.
They're asleep.
Jesus finds them slumbering, wakes them up, gently asks if they could not watch with him for just 1 hour. And then they fall right back asleep.
The text says they were slumbering for sorrow, lacking the capacity to stay awake.
But I have a bit of pushback here, too. Is this critique being too harsh on Peter, James, and John?
How do you mean?
I mean, even Jesus himself made an excuse for them. Jesus looked at them and said, "The spirit truly is willing, but the flesh is weak."
Right. He acknowledges their physical limit.
They were exhausted, terrified, and grieving. And let's be honest, it is biologically exhausting to constantly carry the weight of eternal realities.
It absolutely is.
Our physical brains are almost not wired to hold that kind of heavy, infinite stress all the time without shutting down.
What's fascinating here is how the text anticipates that exact sentiment. It acknowledges that Jesus, in his infinite grace and compassion, made an excuse for them. But then it turns that around and sets a much higher, much more severe standard for the listener. The argument is, yes, our Lord might make that apology for us, but we should endeavor by his grace not to need such an apology.
We shouldn't rely on it as a crutch.
We should be terrified of falling into their fault. A series of piercing, diagnostic questions are thrown at the congregation to test their wakefulness.
Do we ever feel the weight of souls as we ought to feel it?
Do we melt in the presence of the terrors of God which are coming upon others?
Have we realized the passing away of an immortal spirit to the judgment bar of God? Heavy questions. If those thoughts really possessed us, we would scarcely sleep at all. If eternity was as real to us as it was to Jesus in that garden, we would wrestle with God for the souls of our neighbors.
We'd be willing to lay down our reputations, our comforts, our very lives.
It is the lack of these thoughts that causes the slowishness. Think about it. If you really believed your house was on fire and you saw the smoke coming under the door, you wouldn't say, "My flesh is weak," and take a nap on the couch.
No, you'd break a window. You'd scream.
Exactly. The lack of panic indicates a lack of belief.
If you're sleeping, it proves you don't truly feel the heat of the fire. The disciples slept because they didn't fully grasp what was happening just a few yards away from them.
They didn't understand the cosmic transaction about to take place.
The warning to the church is that missing opportunities, or doing the work of the Lord sluggishly, is concrete proof that we have lost sight of the eternal stakes. We treat the gospel like a social club rather than a rescue mission.
Which brings us to the danger of lost strength and creeping weeds. There are two more illustrations aimed directly at believers: Samson and the parable of the tares.
Let's start with Samson. The imagery is famous.
Samson is asleep in Delilah's lap, and this is presented as the ultimate picture of carnal security.
We should probably define carnal security.
Yeah, please do.
Carnal means fleshly, earthly, relying on human strength or visible, temporary circumstances.
Right.
Carnal security is looking at your life. Maybe you have a good job, a solid reputation, you attend church regularly, you know your theology, and saying to yourself, "I am safe, I have made it."
It's a false comfort.
It is an illusion of peace based on external metrics rather than active, dependent faith on Christ.
And while Samson sleeps in that false security, he loses his locks of hair, which means he loses his supernatural strength.
Then he loses his liberty, his eyes, and finally his life.
This story is used as a specific critique of older believers. It paints a portrait of a man who used to be a leader, someone who was strong in the Lord, who infused courage into faint hearts in his younger days.
But now, he's nowhere to be found in the fields of service.
He thinks he has spiritual goods laid up for many years, so he takes his rest. He swaps his youthful zeal for a cold, calculated prudence.
The psychology of Samson in Delilah's lap is chilling when applied to the mature believer.
Oh, absolutely.
Delilah gives us many a dainty kiss. She lulls us into tranquil slumbers, which we imagine to be God's own peace.
We convince ourselves that because we are not committing scandalous public sins, we are doing well.
But it is the peace of satanic enchantment. The peril is that while the good man slumbers, Satan does not slumber. The Philistines are looking on.
The razor is softly stealing over the champion's head.
The text identifies the Samsonian lock as faith. Our strength lies entirely in our active faith in God. Take that away, reduce religion to just a habit, and we are weaker than the weakest man.
I want to talk about that tension between juvenile zeal and mature wisdom. The critique seems to really go after the older, comfortable members of the church who half rebuke what they call juvenile zeal.
Yes, the ones who think they've aged out of the hard work.
Right. They consider themselves prudent and wise now because
Yeah.
they don't get overly emotional or push too hard. Is there a condemnation of wisdom happening here, or is it a condemnation of the laziness that disguises itself as wisdom?
It is absolutely condemning the laziness that disguises itself as wisdom. It is attacking the retirement mentality in the Christian life.
That's a great way to put it.
True spiritual wisdom never leads to apathy. It leads to deeper, more sustained, more effective action.
Yeah.
When a believer says, "I've done my part, let the younger folks handle the heavy lifting," they are laying their head in Delilah's lap.
They think they're being prudent, but the Philistines are binding them.
And they don't even know their strength has departed until it's too late. They wake up to find they have nothing left to offer.
And this individual danger of carnal security connects directly to the corporate danger in the church, which brings us to the parable of the tares.
The parable says that while men slept, the enemy came and sowed tares, which are poisonous weeds, among the good wheat.
This is applied to the local congregation. An unwatchful church becomes an unholy church.
When those who ought to be the watchmen on the walls fall asleep, false doctrines and unholy practices quietly creep in.
The proposed method for curing church heresy here is brilliant and goes against our natural instincts.
It really does. When a church discovers a false doctrine or an unhealthy practice, the instinct is just to cut out the disordered limb, to unpack the specific symptom.
Right. Excommunicate the problem and move on.
But the text argues that you must strengthen the inner life. You boost the overall immune system of the church.
Think of it biologically. When the constitution of man is thoroughly sound, his body naturally fights off and throws out diseases.
In the same way, when a church lives near to Jesus, when it is passionately drinking from the fountain of truth and engaged in vital prayer, that vibrant inner life acts as a safeguard.
The weeds cannot take root in soil that is fiercely cultivated. Sleeping guards invite the enemy.
And if they remain asleep, the consequences are disastrous. The Spirit of God will withdraw.
There's a terrifying historical anecdote brought up from the historian Josephus about the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD.
Yes, Josephus recorded a supernatural event that supposedly occurred right before the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans. The priests were ministering in the temple at night, and they heard a sound. It was the rustling of wings and a voice saying, "Let us go hence."
Wow.
It signified the terrifying withdrawal of God's presence. God was abandoning the temple because of the deep-seated corruption, hypocrisy, and apathy of the people.
This imagery is used to warn a successful congregation. The preacher says trembling has taken hold of him, lest they lose their first love.
He warns that if they sleep on their success, they might hear the rustling of wings.
God had blessed their church with tens of thousands of souls brought to truth, but if they fall asleep, the Spirit will withdraw. The blessing will simply pack up and leave.
That is a staggering thought.
The idea that a church could be financially successful, have incredible programs, be completely full of people every Sunday, but essentially be an empty shell because the Spirit has said, "Let us go hence."
The lights are on, but nobody is home.
That connects the corporate readiness of the church, the wheat field, directly back to the individual readiness of the believer. Which brings us to the fourth biblical illustration for the people of God, the 10 virgins.
We are looking at the parable of the wise and foolish virgins waiting for the bridegroom to arrive for the wedding feast.
Right.
The text makes a point to stress that while the bridegroom tarried, while there was a long delay, they all slumbered and slept.
Both the wise and the foolish.
Then comes the suddenness of the midnight cry, "Behold, the bridegroom cometh." The absolute life or death necessity in that moment was having oil in their vessels with their lamps.
And a listener is not let off the hook here. There are intense, rapid-fire questions fired directly at the audience to break through their complacency.
Are your loins girt up? Are your lamps trimmed?
Could you go in with him to the supper? Have you not much to set in order? Would you be afraid to hear the midnight cry tonight?
Very confronting.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. Both the wise and the foolish virgins fell asleep. They all nodded off, the best of them and the worst of them.
Yep, all 10.
So what actually distinguishes the sleep of the wise from the fatal sleep of the foolish? If everyone is sleeping, why are only some saved when the trumpet sounds?
That is the crucial theological distinction, and it comes down to the inner reality versus the outward appearance.
Okay, unpack that.
The difference is the presence of the oil. The oil represents the Holy Spirit and regenerating true faith.
Got it.
The text is highly realistic about human frailty. It acknowledges that even true believers have moments of lethargy. We get physically tired.
We have seasons of spiritual dryness where zeal fades.
But the fundamental state of the wise virgin is a state of readiness. They have the oil. They possess the inner reality of faith.
So when the cry wakes them up, they are ready to go because the resource is already secured inside them.
The foolish virgins only had the outward appearance of the lamp. They had the church attendance, the right vocabulary, the moral exterior, but they had no internal oil.
So when the crisis hits, when eternity breaks into time, they have nothing to burn.
The instruction given is to live habitually beneath the influence of the second advent.
We need to translate that. The second advent refers to the second coming of Christ, the moment when history wraps up and judgment begins.
Right.
Living habitually beneath the influence means it's not just a piece of doctrinal trivia you agree with on a test. It shapes your daily habits.
It dictates how you spend your money, how you forgive your spouse, how you handle a cancer diagnosis. Exactly. The imagery used is having a window always open towards Jerusalem. It is living with a constant, overriding expectation.
We should sit on our watchtower whole nights. We must be ready to go out of Egypt at a moment's notice.
The wise virgin might close her eyes for a moment of physical rest, but her bags are packed, the oil is secured in her vessel, and her ear is tuned to the frequency of the trumpet.
That concludes the warnings aimed at the church. Now the focus shifts to those outside the faith. The preacher calls them pitiable objects.
He talks about looking out over his massive congregation, looking past the young children who don't understand yet, looking past the frivolous people who are just there for a show.
And zeroing in on a very specific demographic.
Yeah.
Those who have heard the word for years, who know the theology but remain completely unconverted.
He uses the stories of Jonah and Eutychus to illustrate the danger of delay and deafness. Let's look at Jonah first.
Oh, Jonah. The story of Jonah is a masterpiece of psychological denial.
Jonah is on a ship, running away from a direct command from God. A massive supernatural storm hits the ocean, threatening to tear the wooden vessel apart.
And the storm is entirely Jonah's fault. The wrath of God is pursuing him.
And what is Jonah doing while the wood is splintering?
He is sleeping in the bottom of the boat.
He is surrounded by pagan sailors who are all terrified, throwing cargo overboard, all praying to their various false gods, frantically trying to save the ship.
The man who caused the storm, the man who is the actual target of the divine wrath, is the most careless person on board. He is fast asleep.
The way this is applied to the listener is heartbreaking. The listener is told to look at their own modern household.
You live in a house where your mother, your father, your brother, or your sister, they all pray. They are terrified for your soul.
They are pleading with God for you in tears.
Yet you, the unconverted listener, remain the only one unblessed and entirely unconcerned. Everyone else in the house is anxious for you. They see the storm.
But you feel no anxiety or fear about the matter whatsoever.
It's like building up a callus on your hands, the very tool meant to soften the heart. The preaching, the prayers of the family, the constant exposure to truth actually creates a harder shell if it is constantly rejected.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are looking at the terrifying concept of being gospel-hardened.
That is a scary phrase.
It is a uniquely dangerous spiritual condition. You can sit under the most earnest life and death pleading from a pulpit, and instead of being moved to repentance, your heart turns to stone.
You start criticizing the preacher's delivery as a piece of performance art.
You make frivolous observations about the architecture of the building or someone's clothing, while the preacher is agonizing over your eternal destination.
And this leads perfectly into the next biblical illustration. Eutychus.
Eutychus was the young man in the book of Acts who sat in the third loft, the third-story window, while the Apostle Paul was preaching.
Paul preached until midnight, and Eutychus fell into a deep sleep, fell out the window, and hit the ground dead.
Now, Paul miraculously brought him back to life in the biblical account. But the warning here is that there are many modern Eutychuses who fall dead under the hearing of the word and are never known to live again.
The text doesn't mean literally falling out of a building and breaking your neck.
Right. It means they have heard the word and heard the word until they have been preached into a sleep of the deepest kind and at last preached straight into hell.
To explain the mechanics of how this hardening happens, the text goes back to that brilliant industrial age analogy we started with. The boiler factories in Southwark.
The men inside the massive copper boilers holding the hammer against the rivets while the outside is pounded.
The sound is deafening. But after a man has been employed there for a few months, he hardly notices the hammering at all.
The horrible noise becomes just the hum of his daily life. He doesn't care about it anymore. His brain has entirely tuned out the trauma.
That is chilling. The environment has completely destroyed his capacity to hear the warning.
The warning is that it is just the same under the repeated hearing of the Word of God. People go to sleep under preaching that once struck them like a lightning bolt.
The first time they heard about the wrath of God, they trembled. The 100th time, they checked their pocket watch.
There is another comparison to a blacksmith's dog that will lie under the anvil with red-hot sparks flying directly into its face, and yet it just sleeps right through it.
Sinners sleep while the sparks of judgment fly into their faces. The warning loses its edge because the ear has grown deaf to the hammer.
The preacher notes that it would take a literal earthquake or a hurricane to move these stolid, hardened listeners.
And even then, it might only scare them for a day.
He argues that sitting under the word without responding actually rocks the cradle of the soul.
Wow, rocking the cradle.
Every time you hear the truth, feel a slight prick in your conscience, and then push it away to deal with it later, you are rocking yourself into a deeper, more insensible coma.
It is a dreadful aggravation of guilt to perish knowing your duty but not doing it. To have the life-saving medicine put directly to your lips, to know what it is, and to intentionally refuse to swallow it.
Which brings us directly to the fatal illusion of a little more.
This is where the illustration of Solomon the sluggard from the book of Proverbs is unpacked.
The scenario is simple and universally relatable. The sun is up. The dawning of the day has passed. A heavy knock comes at the door to wake the man up for work.
He opens his eyes a little, pulls the covers up, and says, "Leave me alone."
The master knocks again, louder, and the sluggard grumbles. A little more sleep, a little more slumber, just folding of the hands to sleep.
The psychological analysis of procrastination here is masterful. It points out that the sluggard does not intend to sleep until noon.
He doesn't make a conscious decision to ruin his day. When he asks for a little more sleep, he really only intends to sleep for 5 more minutes.
He genuinely believes he will get up right after that.
If he knew that falling back asleep would cost him half the day, cost him his job, and lead to poverty, he would be shocked at his own laziness. But what harm could there possibly be in just one more delicious doze? Who could deny him just a wink or two?
And that is exactly how people treat their eternal souls. The text argues that sinners do not intend to risk their souls for another 12 months.
They do not plan to be rebels against God for a decade. They just want to wait until next Sunday.
They say, "My conscience agrees with the gospel. I know I need to get my life right with God, but I must enjoy a little pleasure first. I just have certain engagements I need to get over this week."
Let me finish college. Let me get my career established. Then I'll focus on religion.
And then, week after week, year after year, slips silently by. The phrase used is, "Delay is the devil's great net."
The most effective trap isn't a blatant, aggressive rejection of the truth. It isn't becoming a militant atheist.
It's the subtle, gentle, highly reasonable promise of tomorrow.
The devil does not need you to declare war on heaven. He just needs you to hit the snooze button.
The intent to act later soothes the conscience perfectly. It allows the person to sleep soundly while literally hanging by a thread over absolute disaster.
The person thinks, I am not rejecting God. I am just waiting for a more convenient season. I am being thoughtful about it.
But that convenient season never arrives because the heart is getting harder every single day they wait.
The preacher shares a heartbreaking pastoral realization with his congregation. He tells them, looking them in the eye, that he knows he will likely have to bury some of them.
And he will have to stand over their graves with absolutely no hope for their future happiness.
Not because they were aggressive enemies of the church, not because they burned Bibles, but simply because they folded their hands just a little too long.
They held their souls over hell's mouth for 20 years. Through continual delays and polite indecision.
It is the tragedy of good intentions paving the road to destruction.
You mentioned hanging over disaster, which sets up the final section, imminent destruction. The message concludes with its most visceral graphic warnings yet.
It pulls from 2 extremely violent Old Testament stories, Abishai and Saul, and Jael and Sisera.
Let's walk through the first one. David and his mighty man Abishai sneak into the camp of King Saul in the dead of night.
Saul has been hunting David like an animal, trying to murder him. But now Saul and his entire perimeter of guards are fast asleep in the trench.
The supernatural deep sleep from the Lord has fallen on them.
David and Abishai tread softly, stepping over sleeping soldiers right into the center of the camp. There is Saul, lying dead asleep, completely defenseless, with his own spear stuck in the ground right next to his bolster.
Abishai looks at the sleeping king, looks at the spear, and says to David, "Let me strike him. It shall be but this once."
One single stroke. He promises he won't need to strike twice. He would pin the king to the earth, and the enemy would be gone forever.
Saul is sleeping so calmly, breathing deeply, completely unaware that a strong, violent hand is hovering right over him with a sharp javelin, begging for permission to end his life.
The preacher takes that image and turns it on the audience. He says, Methinks I see you, O you sleeping sinners, lying in the same imminent peril.
He imagines the evil one, or the angel of divine justice, hovering over the sleeping, procrastinating sinner, saying, "Let me smite him. He has had time enough. He has heard enough sermons."
Let me thrust the javelin of unbelief into his soul but this once, and the harvest will be past.
He also references the parable of the barren tree, where justice cries out, "Cut it down. Why cumbereth it the ground?" So what does this all mean?
The escalating violence of these metaphors is striking.
We started this hour talking about oversleeping. Then we moved to a guy falling out a window because he was tired. Now we have a heavy spear hovering an inch from a man's throat.
The escalating violence mirrors the escalating urgency and the hidden reality of the sinner's condition. The longer you sleep, the closer the blade gets.
The longer you delay, the less time there is for the intervening mercy of God to hold back the arm of justice.
And this leads to the most gruesome the most psychologically hitting picture of all, which is the story of Sisera and Jael from the Book of Judges.
Sisera was a ruthless military commander who fought a battle, lost his entire army, and fled on foot.
He is exhausted, dehydrated, hot, and full of fear. He comes to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber, thinking she is an ally because there was peace between their houses.
He asks for a little water, and she gives him milk. She brings forth butter in a lordly dish.
He drinks, feels completely safe, and throws himself down in the tent to sleep. And once he's in a deep, heavy sleep, Jael takes a workman's hammer, takes a wooden tent pin, and drives it straight through his temples, pinning his skull to the earth.
It is horrific. The betrayal is absolute. Sisera thought he was in a friendly tent. He ate the butter from the lordly dish. He felt contented, refreshed, and secure.
And that very security, that very comfort, was his death warrant.
This raises an important question regarding how human beings view sin. Sisera thought he was with a friend.
Sinners think sin is their friend. They ask for pleasure, they ask for a release from the stress of life, and sin gladly provides it.
The lordly dish of butter represents the temporary, luxurious, rich pleasure of sin. It feels good, it tastes rich, it numbs the pain.
But its only purpose, the only reason sin offers you that luxury, is to lull your conscience into a fatal coma before sudden destruction.
The preacher says men go to the haunt of the strange woman, or the settle of the drunkard, or the chair of the scorner, thinking they will find peace and fellowship.
They eat the butter, they lie down in contentment, and because the tent is quiet, they do not see the sharp tent pin in the left hand and the heavy hammer in the right.
The luxury creates the vulnerability. The comfort is the trap. He warns the listener, looking them dead in the eye, if you sleep on but another night or even another hour, the destroyer may have done the deed.
You will be fastened to the earth forever, the permanent victim of your own delusions.
He quotes the book of Proverbs, comparing the delaying sinner to an ox going dumbly to the slaughter, or a bird hasting to the snare, not knowing that it is for his life.
The contrast between the luxurious butter in the lordly dish and the violent, brutal tent peg is exactly the contrast between the fleeting, momentary pleasures of sin and the eternal, unbending reality of judgment.
Sin always presents itself in a lordly dish. It appeals to your refined tastes, your desires, your ego. But its end is the grave.
Which brings us to the summary of our analysis today.
Whether it is the established believer losing their strength and their locks like Samson in the lap of Delilah because they traded zeal for carnal security,
or the unconverted finding false rest in the deadly tent of jail because they loved the butter more than the truth.
spiritual slumber is a lethal condition. The alarm has been sounded.
The call made at the very end of the message is desperate. It tells the listener to flee like Lot out of Sodom.
Do not linger in the plains. Do not look back at what you are leaving behind. Do not hesitate for 5 more minutes of sleep.
You must escape the burning city. Run to the cross, which is the only shelter and true refuge from the vengeance of God.
And as we close, I want to leave you with a chilling concept straight from the preacher's lips in this 1871 text.
He stated that if he had to be lost, if he had to go to hell, he would rather perish as a Zulu or a Red Indian who had never once in their entire life listened to the truth than perish under the ministry of the gospel.
He said to perish under the gospel ministry, to hear the warnings, to know the theology, to feel the convicting hammer and still go to sleep, is to perish with a vengeance.
It leaves us with a heavy, deeply personal question to consider as we look at our own lives.
Does the privilege of possessing the truth, of sitting in a church or listening to theological analysis, actually increase your eternal danger if you choose to sleep through the alarm?
That is a sobering, terrifying thought to mull over.
Thank you for joining us as we unpack this heavy, necessary warning. We will see you next time.